Stop for a moment and listen. You are not broken. What you were made to believe was your fault was never the truth. It was a distortion designed to weaken you. What narcissism stole from you, your peace, your voice, yourself, that has not vanished forever. It can be reclaimed, rebuilt, and embodied again. The fact that you are here, right now, means that some part of you, the deepest, wisest part, has decided that the cycle ends today. Take a breath. This is your new boundary, the line where old patterns die, and a new story begins. Maybe you've been conditioned to walk on eggshells, to apologize for existing, to second-guess your own memories because someone insisted. That never happened. This constant erosion of your reality has a name: manipulation. More specifically, it is a cocktail of gaslighting, blame-shifting, and emotional exploitation. None of this was an accident. Narcissistic abuse is systematic. It targets your trust in your own mind, because if you stop trusting yourself, you become dependent on the abuser's version of reality. Carl Jung, the Swiss psychiatrist and founder of analytical psychology, explained something that perfectly reveals why narcissistic dynamics are so damaging. Every person wears a persona, a mask we show the world to fit in, and hides a shadow, the parts of ourselves we repress because we fear rejection. Narcissists are masters at sensing the gaps between your persona and your shadow. They find your deepest unacknowledged wounds, the need to be seen, the hunger for love, the fear of abandonment, and they exploit them. They mirror your persona to gain your trust, while secretly manipulating your shadow to keep you compliant. But Jung also gave us the blueprint for escape: individuation. This is the lifelong process of integrating all parts of yourself, the light and the dark, so that you live as your whole authentic self. In practical terms, individuation means you stop living inside someone else's script. You stop being the character in their drama, and you begin to write your own story. The more whole you become, the less control narcissistic people can have over you, because there are fewer unguarded doors into your mind. The first step is breaking the spell of their narrative. Look at the facts without emotional fog. How many times did the story change to suit their advantage? How many times were you told your feelings were too much or wrong? Narcissists cannot tolerate facing their own shadow, so they project it onto you. That is why they accuse you of the very things they are guilty of. This projection is not random, it's a defense mechanism that allows them to avoid self-confrontation. Once you understand this, something shifts inside you. You stop carrying shame that was never yours to begin with. The next step is returning those projections to their rightful owner. If someone told you you're too sensitive, what they likely meant was, stop noticing the ways I'm hurting you. Your sensitivity is not a flaw. It is an advanced radar system for detecting emotional truth. If someone called you selfish for setting boundaries, it often meant they were frustrated that you were no longer endlessly available to meet their needs at the expense of your own. These inversions of meaning are deliberate. They train you to doubt your instincts. But today you begin to reverse the training. From now on, you can respond internally with affirmations grounded in reality. I am not responsible for repairing those who repeatedly harm me. My value is not dependent on anyone's approval. My boundaries are acts of self-respect, not selfishness. Jung warned that unexamined complexes, emotionally charged patterns rooted in past trauma, make us vulnerable to manipulation. A common one is the abandonment complex, which makes you cling to people who mistreat you for fear of being left. Another is the inadequacy complex, which convinces you that you are never enough, no matter how much you give. These complexes are not moral defects. They are learned survival strategies. They can be unlearned, and they are unlearned by doing what Jung would call shadow work: recognizing the wound, owning it, and then giving yourself what you've been expecting from others: consistent care, respect, and validation. Neuroscience now confirms what Jung intuited. When you choose a new behavior, even a small one, you begin to rewire your brain. Each time you refuse to apologize for a healthy boundary, each time you choose silence instead of engaging in a trap argument, each time you prioritize rest instead of proving your worth through overwork, you are laying down a new neural pathway. Over time, this becomes your default mode. Another crucial aspect Jung emphasized is integration of the shadow. This doesn't mean becoming negative or dark. It means acknowledging the parts of you that you've been taught to suppress: your anger, your ambition, your right to say no, your desire for peace. When these parts are integrated, they stop being liabilities and start becoming sources of strength. For example, your anger, when channeled, becomes the energy to defend your dignity. Your ambition becomes the drive to create a life aligned with your values. Your no becomes a full sentence that guards your well-being. Jung famously said, "What you resist persists. What you accept transforms." When you accept your whole self, narcissistic manipulation loses its power because there is nothing left in you to hook into with shame. If you are wondering whether it is too late, hear this clearly: it is never too late to reclaim yourself. The mind is plastic, the spirit is resilient. The fact that you can see the pattern means you are already halfway out of it. What follows is not about erasing the past, it is about transforming the meaning of your past so that it empowers rather than imprisons you. So we start here, together, with one truth: you are not defined by the harm done to you. You are defined by the choices you make now. From this moment on, every choice can be a step back toward yourself. Now that you've broken the first layer of the spell, the belief that you were at fault for the abuse, it's time to rebuild the foundation that narcissism tried to dismantle. This is not simply about moving on. It's about reclaiming your internal authority, your capacity to decide what is true for you, and your right to live without constant psychological invasion. Let's start with your emotions. Under narcissistic influence, emotions are often turned against you. If you show sadness, they may label it weakness. If you show anger, they may call you unstable. If you show joy, they may try to sabotage it. Over time, this conditions you to suppress or mistrust your own emotional signals. But emotions are not the enemy, they are data. Neuroscientist Antonio Damasio's research shows that emotions are essential for decision-making. Without them, your mind struggles to prioritize and act. In other words, when narcissists shame you for feeling, they are attempting to sever your decision-making power. The first reclaiming step is to validate your own emotions without external permission. If you feel sadness, it's because something in your life has registered as loss. If you feel anger, it's because a boundary has been crossed. If you feel anxiety, it's because you've been living in prolonged unpredictability. None of these make you defective. They make you human. To reconnect with your emotions, start asking yourself daily, what am I feeling right now? And what might it be telling me? This simple act begins to reverse the years of emotional gaslighting. From here, we move to the body, your most reliable truth teller. Psychological abuse is not just mental. It imprints on the body in the form of tension, shallow breathing, digestive issues, and even chronic pain. Trauma researchers like Bessel van der Kolk have shown that the body remembers what the mind tries to forget. This is why certain places, voices, or smells can trigger a physical reaction long before your conscious mind catches up. Reclaiming yourself means creating safety in your body again. One effective way is through controlled breathing, inhaling for 4 counts, holding for 4, exhaling for 6, which signals your nervous system that you are not in immediate danger, even if your mind is replaying past events. Boundaries come next. But here's a truth many miss. Boundaries are not ultimatums. They are filters. An ultimatum is about controlling someone else's behavior. A boundary is about protecting your own. For example, an ultimatum might sound like, you have to stop yelling at me, or else a boundary sounds like, if you yell at me, I will end the conversation. The first focuses on their change. The second focuses on your action. This subtle shift makes boundaries enforceable and self-respecting. Narcissists are experts at testing these limits, so clarity and consistency are your best tools. Write your boundaries down, practice them out loud, and hold them without over-explaining. Remember, the people who benefit from your lack of boundaries will see them as attacks. Those who truly care for you will see them as healthy. The next layer is detaching from the narcissistic reward system. Narcissistic relationships often follow the cycle of idealization, devaluation, and intermittent reinforcement, giving you small bursts of affection or approval after long stretches of criticism or coldness. This creates a biochemical addiction. Your brain releases dopamine during those rare good moments, making you chase them even harder. Breaking free requires building new dopamine sources that are not dependent on them. Exercise, creative expression, learning something new, spending time with safe people. These activities feed your reward system in a sustainable way. The more you fill your life with genuine rewards, the less grip their approval will have on you. At this point, it's vital to address self-talk because the words you speak internally either reinforce the abuse or undo it. Narcissistic conditioning often installs a critical inner voice that echoes the abuser's words. You're overreacting. You can't handle life without me. You'll never find better. When you catch this voice, name it that. That is not me. That is the installed critic. Then replace it with a grounded truth. I am capable. I am allowed to take up space. I am worthy of respect. Consistency is key. The brain learns through repetition. Carl Jung believed that reclaiming the self also requires facing the parts of you that were complicit in your own silencing. Not to blame yourself, but to integrate those fragments into your whole being. This means asking hard questions. Where did I ignore my intuition? When did I choose peace over truth at my own expense? These are not accusations. They are invitations to step into radical self-honesty. Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. By bringing these patterns into the light, you gain the power to choose differently. A crucial yet often overlooked part of recovery is redefining loyalty. Narcissistic abuse thrives on misplaced loyalty to family roles, to cultural expectations, to unspoken contracts and relationships. You may have been taught that love means never giving up on someone no matter what they do. But healthy love has limits. Loyalty to another that requires betrayal of yourself is not loyalty, it's self-abandonment. True loyalty begins with yourself. This is not selfishness. It's the foundation from which all healthy relationships are built. Recovery is not a straight line, and it is not free of grief. In fact, part of reclaiming what narcissism took from you is mourning the version of yourself that existed before the abuse, as well as the dreams you had with that person. Grief is not weakness. It is evidence that you can still love, that you still care deeply about your own life. Give yourself permission to grieve without rushing it. This is the fertile ground from which your next chapter will grow. And here's a practical affirmation to anchor all of this work. What was taken from me is returning in new form. I no longer beg for permission to exist. I no longer wait for someone else to give me worth. My voice is mine. My time is mine. My life is mine. Repeat it daily, especially when old patterns try to pull you back. This stage of the journey is not about winning against the narcissist. It's about winning yourself back. That is the victory that can never be taken from you again. By now, you have started to reconnect with your emotions, your body, your boundaries, and the truth of your own voice. But reclaiming what narcissism stole from you also means rebuilding trust in yourself, in your perception, and in the possibility of safe relationships. This step is delicate, because after prolonged manipulation, trust feels like both a necessity and a threat. The first form of trust you must rebuild is self-trust. Narcissistic abuse undermines this at every level. They make you doubt your memory, your judgment, your worth, and even your sanity. You may find yourself second-guessing everything, from what you wore that day to whether you're allowed to say no. Self-trust grows when you consistently act in alignment with your values, even in small ways. When you say, "I will take a walk today," and you follow through, your inner self registers. I keep my word to myself. Over time, these small kept promises form a solid base. It doesn't start with giant acts of courage. It starts with tiny, deliberate choices you follow through on. Jung would say that rebuilding trust in oneself is also an act of integration, because you are bringing together the fragmented parts of yourself that the abuse scattered. You might have a part of you that is cautious and suspicious, and another part that is eager to connect. Both are valid. The goal is not to eliminate one, but to allow them to coexist under your conscious leadership. You become the inner parent that listens to all parts of you, weighs their concerns, and makes balanced decisions. The second form of trust is trusting your perception again. Gaslighting, one of the most common tools of narcissistic abuse, is designed to corrode your ability to interpret reality. If they can make you question whether what you saw or heard actually happened, they can rewrite your story in real time. To heal this, practice reality checking with yourself. When something feels off, write down the observable facts. For example, they raised their voice when I disagreed. My heart started racing. I felt the urge to apologize even though I did nothing wrong. This written record acts as an anchor against manipulation. Over time, you'll need the journal less, because your confidence in your own perception will naturally return. The third form of trust is trusting safe people, and this is where many survivors hesitate. After experiencing betrayal, part of you may believe that vulnerability equals danger. This is understandable. It's also limiting if left unchallenged. The key is to build this trust gradually, using discernment. Not everyone earns the same level of access to your inner world. Observe how people respond to your boundaries. Do they respect them or try to negotiate them away? Do they listen without rushing to defend themselves when you share a hurt? Do they celebrate your successes without turning them into competition? These are the markers of emotional safety. Now let's talk about identity reconstruction. Narcissistic relationships often consume your sense of self. You may have adapted to their moods, tastes, and opinions to the point where you no longer know what you like or want. This is called enmeshment, and it blurs the line between where you end and the other person begins. Reclaiming yourself means asking, who am I when I am not reacting to them? This is not an easy question, but it is essential. Start with small experiments. Try new activities, revisit old hobbies, change your environment, or spend time alone without digital distractions. Pay attention to what energizes you and what drains you. These are clues to your authentic self. Carl Jung emphasized the importance of symbolic work in identity recovery. Symbols speak directly to the unconscious, bypassing the rational defenses that trauma often builds. This could mean paying attention to dreams, creating art without judgment, or working with archetypes. Ask yourself, if my current self were a symbol, what would it be? Maybe it's a tree growing back its leaves after a harsh winter, or a river finding a new path after being blocked. Allow your psyche to communicate in these images. They hold guidance you may not yet be able to put into words. Another dimension of recovery is reclaiming your time. Narcissists often dominate your schedule, either by demanding your presence, creating constant crises, or making you feel guilty for having your own plans. This trains you to live reactively rather than proactively. To reverse this, start scheduling non-negotiable blocks of time for yourself. This could be as simple as an hour to read, take a walk, or work on a personal goal. Guard this time fiercely. It sends a powerful message to your subconscious. My life is my own. Here's a truth you need to hear. Healing is not about becoming who you were before the abuse. That version of you didn't have the wisdom you carry now. Healing is about becoming a new version of yourself, one that integrates the lessons, the boundaries, and the self-respect you've earned through fire. Jung called this transformation the alchemical process of the soul, turning the lead of suffering into the gold of self-realization. And you can support this transformation with intentional affirmations that are both emotional and practical. For example, I trust myself to see clearly. I am no longer available for relationships that diminish me. I choose where my energy goes, and I choose wisely. These statements are not just motivational, they are reprogramming your neural pathways. Each repetition strengthens the association between your identity and your autonomy. Finally, as you deepen this stage of recovery, prepare for push. Narcissists often escalate their tactics when they realize they are losing control. They may attempt hoovering sudden, seemingly affectionate gestures meant to pull you back in. They may try smear campaigns to damage your reputation. They may provoke emotional reactions to re-establish the old dynamic. Recognize these behaviors for what they are: desperation to restore a system that benefited them at your expense. The best response is not emotional engagement, but calm, consistent boundaries. Remember, you are not in a debate. You are in a process of liberation. Each step you take to reclaim what narcissism stole is an act of defiance against the narrative they imposed on you. Each moment you choose self-respect over self-abandonment is a declaration: I belong to myself now. And in that belonging, you find not only safety, but freedom. You have reclaimed your emotions, rebuilt your trust, and begun to rediscover who you are outside the shadow of narcissistic control. But the final stage of this transformation is about something even deeper: sustaining your freedom and creating a life that is not just free from abuse, but rich with meaning, connection, and self-expression. This is where we step fully into Jung's vision, the idea that the greatest tragedy is not the wound itself, but a life unlived because of it. The first truth you need to embrace here is that healing is not a finish line. It is an ongoing relationship with yourself. Narcissistic abuse is like a storm that uproots a tree even when the storm is gone. The tree must grow new roots in order to thrive again. Your daily habits are those roots. This means continuing to check in with yourself. What am I feeling? What do I need today? It means protecting your mental space from people, environments, and even online spaces that echo the old dynamics. Freedom is not just leaving the abuser, it's refusing to let their voice live rent-free in your mind. Jung wrote about the individuation process, which is the journey of becoming whole, integrating your shadow, your wounds, your strengths, and your desires into a unified self. Individuation after narcissistic abuse involves accepting that you will never be the same as before, and that this is not a loss, but an evolution. You are now someone who understands manipulation when you see it, someone who has practiced saying no, someone who can read the undercurrents in a conversation. These are hard-earned skills, and they make you not just a survivor, but a deeply perceptive human being. One of the most liberating aspects of this stage is the shift from survival to creation. For so long, your energy was consumed by managing the narcissist's moods, avoiding conflict, and anticipating attacks. Now, that energy can be redirected into building something that belongs entirely to you. Maybe it's a business, a creative project, a new career path, or simply a home environment that reflects your true tastes. Creation is the antidote to destruction. Every time you make something, a meal, a painting, a garden, a new plan, you send a message to your psyche. I am no longer living in reaction to them. I am living for me. But sustaining freedom also means navigating triggers. Even after years, certain sights, sounds, or tones of voice can pull you back into the emotional state you lived in during the abuse. The key here is to respond, not react. When triggered, first name the experience. This is a trigger, not a threat. Then ground yourself, feel your feet on the floor, your breath moving in and out, the physical reality of the present moment. Over time, you'll notice the intensity of these triggers fading because your nervous system is learning that the danger is truly over. Another vital step is cultivating relationships that nourish rather than drain. It can be tempting to isolate entirely after abuse, but Jung reminds us that we find parts of ourselves through our connections with others. The difference now is that you no longer choose relationships based on who needs you the most. You choose them based on mutual respect, reciprocity, and shared values. This requires practicing slow trust, allowing people to earn deeper access over time, rather than offering it all at once. The pace of this trust building is not a flaw. It is the wisdom of someone who has learned the cost of ignoring red flags. And here's a truth that might challenge you. Forgiveness is optional. Many survivors are pressured to forgive and move on. But Jung would remind us that real forgiveness cannot be forced, and it is not a requirement for healing. You can heal fully without ever reconciling with a person who harmed you. In fact, sometimes the most compassionate choice for yourself is to keep a clear and permanent distance. Forgiveness, if it comes, should be a byproduct of your own peace, not a gift to the one who broke you. Let's also talk about legacy. When you have lived through narcissistic abuse and reclaimed yourself, you carry a map that others still lost in the maze desperately need. This doesn't mean you must become a public advocate or counselor, though some do. It can be as simple as modeling healthy boundaries in your friendships, raising children with emotional literacy, or speaking up when you see manipulation at play. In doing so, you disrupt the cycle. You become living proof that the chain can be broken. And now, to anchor this stage, here is a closing affirmation to carry forward. I am no longer defined by what was done to me. I am defined by what I choose, by the life I create, by the truth I stand in. I carry my past not as a weight, but as wisdom. My voice is steady, my path is my own, and my future is wide open. This is the point where you can look back at the version of yourself who was trapped in that relationship and say, we made it. And you did not because the journey was easy, but because you refused to give up on your own becoming. You turned the wounds into doorways, the silence into song, the fear into discernment. That is the profound vision Jung held, that the self, once reclaimed, is the most unshakable force in the world. Your life from this moment forward is not about avoiding the storm. It's about knowing that you can survive it, rebuild after it, and still plant gardens in its wake. And that is the kind of power that no one, not even the most skilled manipulator, can ever take from you again.